Broadcasting from our subterranean studios in beautiful Paradise Valley, Pennsylvania, it's Business and Brain Tumor Talk, a unique show with topics to educate, inspire, and implement. Without further ado, here's your host, Rick Franzo.
Welcome, everyone, to Business and Brain Tumor Talk. I'm your host, Rick Franzo. Today, the enormous pleasure to have Chris Yarnell, the founder of Battle Borne, with us today. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, brother. I appreciate it. I'm going to talk about the mission that Battle Borne has, and I'm going to leave the rest up to you. So, Battle Borne, its mission is to connect veterans with the resources needed to recover from mental, emotional, and physical trauma so they can restore their lives and reintegrate into society. We achieve this through a collaborative effort of like-minded individuals and organizations by leveraging both internal and external resources to assist our veterans in our community. It's a worthy cause. I've been associated with Battle Borne for a few years with you, kind of on a as-needed basis. And it's really great to have you here, Chris. You're one of my personal heroes, and I know for so many people in the community you are. So thank you for all you do. I appreciate you, man.
Likewise, Rick. I appreciate everything you have done to support us since you started, and I'm super proud of this new endeavor that you have picked up on, man. You know, knowing your story with the business side and the brain tumor, I think it's just amazing what you're doing to help the people who have yet gone or have already gone through what you have survived. So, thank you for what you do.
I appreciate it. I see the door behind you moving. Is that Josiah?
No, Josiah's not home from school yet. That's the cat coming out of the room. So for everyone watching, there are no ghosts in my home. If you see things moving, it's just a figment of your imagination. At least that's what I tell myself. So
it's a figment of your imagination. Yeah. Chris, you founded Battle Borne how many years ago?
So ironically, it's a great question because literally our birthday was about 2 weeks ago. We are, excuse me, Rick, we are 6 years old. Exactly.
Excellent. Excellent. And how many veterans, and we're going to get into the particulars of the services that you provide and all the partners, but how many veterans do you feel in the last 6 years have been assisted by Battle Borne? The number is staggering. It's probably incredible.
So one of my many, many faults, yes, I said that. We can make sure my wife listens to this podcast. One of my many faults, and especially as a young grassroots, small nonprofit organization, was being that we didn't have grant money or, hit the community up for a lot of, donation components. And we raised predominantly a large amount of the money is through the apparel sales. This will make sense in a second. It wasn't so much of a huge need, or we didn't understand. Let me say it this way. We didn't understand about tracking data and numbers and writing it down. Our mission was just to go out and help people. We weren't keeping score.
Right.
Like, hey, we helped 400 people, give us more money so we can help more people. We were out there giving back, man. It was like a free, we wanted to serve. We wanted to serve our community. And it wasn't only until about 3 years ago when I started having people say, hey, man, like, you guys are out there doing amazing things. You're everywhere. You're in the community. You're going into homeless camps. You're doing all this stuff to fill the gap of what other organizations aren't doing. You guys better start tracking your numbers. So if you ever want to apply for grants, we're like, tracking numbers? What do you mean? And we had to slowly get there. So it's really hard to say, Rick, how many. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad I don't know. If I'm being honest with you as someone who's interviewing me and as a personal friend of yours, I need to tell you that I don't want to say I don't care, but I'm glad I don't know. And the reason that is because my wife and I, our first individual that ever came through our program, every time we see this man, he has done amazing things. He is now a prominent member of the community at a very high position helping other people. And here's a guy that came to our program 6.5 years ago when we were just starting, and 6 years when we got the license. And, my wife always says she gets tears in her eyes when she sees him. And she always says, if we don't help another vet, I'm good. We changed one person's life. And that was when we were like, brand new. So there's many success stories like that. And I don't think about them until I see them. Like, I'm not sitting here going, oh, you know what we did for him and for this one and for that one. It's like when I see them, it's like, oh man, you don't realize the magnitude of the impact your work is doing until you see it. So I hope that kind of answers your question. I wish I had a better number for you.
No, you know what? It just said everything about the character and integrity of you and your wife and your organization. So you're not keeping score, right? But what you are doing is just seeing the impact that it's helping one person at a time. And, I've seen what the growth has been in the last, oh my gosh, what has it been? 5 years at least since we've known each other. And, very soon after Battle Borne was founded, and how you have expanded into different counties and the services and the help that you are able to provide to our veterans. And talk a little bit about your background a little bit from the military and how you were in that place and how did you get to this place?
Oh, man, you said we got a 30-minute podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to encourage you just for our audience. Okay. Yeah. Chris is, I guess the word that I want to use, passionate. Yes, we'll use passionate. Yeah. That's very polite and tactful. So keep it to, a nice Reader's Digest condensed version, my friend.
I think it's important. I would normally never share this, especially on a public platform here. But one of the things I had found out, and it ties into my story, is that, I have suffered from certain things my whole life, things I don't like to say, different labels as we talk about. And one of the things that I have had to learn through therapy myself is that it's difficult for me to express things. Sometimes I have to tell them in a story, to get them out. So, I know I'm working on those things, but it's almost like, it's difficult for me. But, so yeah, quick, little background. Grandfather fought in World War II, struggled his whole life. He helped raise me. So I grew up with a shell shock affected World War II combat veteran. You can come on in. Josiah's coming in now. Say hi to Rick.
Hey, what's going on?
The excitement of being home from school and getting ready to go to your baseball game at 4.
Yeah, a teenager. That's the life, man.
So for everyone watching, that is my son, Josiah. He volunteered with me to go into homeless camps when he was 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, and 7-year-old. And when he was 7, we started the organization. And he doesn't get so much time to volunteer anymore, with playing some sports now and stuff. But, I drag him out there when I can. He's a good kid. And, he's been a staple in the organization since we started. And I think it's good for anyone who has kids, whether you're a veteran or not, getting involved in your community sets a good example for our young ones, because if we don't show them, I don't know about you, Rick, but I've had people tell me my whole life, you should do this and you should do that. And I go, yeah. And then, and that'll tie into my story in a second about the Marines, but they'd say, you should do this, you should do that, you should act this way, you should do that way. And I'd say, yeah. But it's the people that, were examples for me, more importantly than what they said. It's more about what they did. So I think it's important to just point that out. I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but part of the reason I keep doing this is I want my son to carry on that same compassion for fellow man, and that obviously includes women. So the Marine Corps thing, grandfather struggled tremendously, watched him pretty much cry himself to sleep every night, had no idea what he was going through. Father was in during my father served like in the Vietnam era. He was not in Vietnam. He was slightly younger. He had joined towards the end. And he was in the Army. So grandfather was in the Navy. Father was in the Army. I remember my father was one of the first, due to some of the things that had happened to him in the military, he really struggled. He developed a physical ailment, which deteriorated him pretty fast. And my father took his life in 1989. And, back then they really weren't tracking veteran suicides that much, and they chalked it up to like other things, and it just wasn't really being documented like that, and it wasn't really a big concern. But it was traumatizing for me to come down my first day of high school as a freshman and having my mom tell me, "Hey, I need you to sit down." My parents weren't together. So fast forward, I remember like right before that happened, I had told my parents, I had a stepdad as well. So he was Army. And and he pretty much helped raise me along with my grandfather because my dad was kind of in and out. So I remember telling that, I didn't think I wanted to go to college. In case you didn't notice, I'm not the studious type.
So you have a rich background as people were in the military, huh?
Fairly much, yeah. A lot of the men in my family, on my mom's and my father's side. So I checked with my grandmother a few years ago before she passed. My grandmother, my dad's mom, and her husband and 3 of her boys were in, and found out that my grandfather on my dad's side, who I never met, he was the only Marine in our family besides on both sides. So I had one Marine in my family, and I remember going to my stepdad and my grandfather and saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about joining the military." And they were like, "Why? You're a pretty good wrestler. You could probably stay wrestling, maybe get a scholarship. None of us ever went to college. You could be the first." And I was like, "Well, if you didn't want to go to college, why do you think I would want to go to college?" Because I don't know if for the fans that are watching, Rick, they don't know me like you do. For those of you watching, I have this knack for being a jokester, in a sense, like in a nice and loving, caring way. But
look at this. You are so tactful today. You are a jokester, right?
Right.
So fast forward, right? This only half an hour show. I told you he's going to be very passionate about what he's speaking about. So fast forward, you're in the military and ...
And I only joined the Marines because Dad and Grandpop said I wouldn't make it. So
good reason.
I'm in the Marine Corps. I'm having the time of my life. I always get a kick out of when people say, "Thank you for your service." I think to myself, they're thanking me for having the time of my life. This is great. I'm in the Marine Corps. I get injured, and I convince the Navy doctors that I just need 1 day of rest and I'll be back up and I'm good to go and I'll be on track with everything. And they're like, "Okay." So I get hurt again. And at this time, they're contemplating possibly having to amputate my leg. So, it was a pretty severe situation. I woke up, my leg was purple from my hip to my ankle. And that's when the United States Navy, because the Navy is, we're a department of the Navy, the Marines. The Navy said, "That's it. We had enough. We don't want you to be crippled. We're going to offer you this early medical retirement, honorable discharge." So that was the start of where we are today. So my military career of wanting to be a career man. Look, I got to tell you this. People laugh. They're like, "Oh, you wanted to retire from the military. That's so honorable." I said, "No, I wanted to be retired by 42. I didn't really.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a good career path.
I didn't want to serve the military my whole life. I wanted to be able to be retired at 42. I don't like working. I want to get out fast.
If you don't like working, guess what? You really messed that up, brother. I mean, that's all you're doing right now. So Battle Borne was founded and you started to help veterans, and it grew into the amazing organization and the far-reaching organization that it is right now. And so what are some of the services and ways that you help veterans through your partnership with the community as a whole?
So basically what we did is, I struggled for years after the military with all those things that happened. And when I finally got myself situated, I automatically saw that going to the VA and groups with those other guys and helping them with the stuff that I learned was huge. I'm a firm believer when we help others, we help ourselves. So that being said, what we did when we started to answer your question was I looked at what was not being done. Instead of cookie cutter, and I know I'm trying to remember, I know we've had these conversations multiple times on a personal level. I need to make sure I'm articulating them for the folks that are watching, but in the best possible way I can describe it, is Battle Borne is a fill in the gap, bridge the gap organization. We are going to step up and take on the challenge of what need is not being met. Because our mindset is, if we're cookie cuttering services, right? We're not creating a community of organizations working together. I know we're not technically a business per se, but we are a business. And I feel like if I'm doing the same thing you are, now we don't create community where I can work with you and send my folks to you and you can send your folks to me. We don't create community. We created competition. Now you say, well, why? What do you mean competition? If you're helping people, there isn't one organization that can help everybody. Absolutely correct. That's our big mindset. We're not arrogant enough to think that every service we provide is going to be attractive to every veteran. There might be a veteran that doesn't like my support group, likes the one right down the street or a different night, right? But where I'm going with this is, when I say create competition, is most organizations rely on community funding or grants. Well, if you're doing the same mission as the guy in the very next town, why would people want to donate to you over them, or vice versa? And now you're asking grant money, and the way certain grants, like at least the ones that I know, like the VTF grant, Veterans Trust Fund, they're going to look and see before they approve you for a grant if anybody's doing the same thing or you're doing something different in the same area. So you didn't create a community. You created a competition now, because now
Makes sense.
we can't work with one another. We're doing the same thing. I mean, we still can, but you get what I'm saying?
I do. No. And so there's really, you're filling in the gaps so that there's no overlap and people aren't doing the same thing for the same type of clientele. And in your case, it's veterans and things like that. So it really, it makes a lot of sense. Where are you operating mostly, and what are some of the services that you're providing with regard to veterans and some of the needs and things that would help them?
So we started with peer-based support programs. That's our ground level. So we have 7 programs that are for veterans, first responders, active military, and their families. So we have a full, well-rounded, holistic program that touches each one of those components, with support group, counseling, and mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and relaxation stuff. So we touch a little bit of the mental, the spiritual, and the physical. Okay. Right. We're not a treatment organization. We're not getting people, we're not leading them to, we're not that kind of a party. We can touch each component of what somebody might be struggling through.
Right.
So the 7-based peer support programming is our main thing. And then what we do is, as you read at the beginning with the mission statement, we work with a like-minded organizational compound and people to meet whatever needs we cannot. So to answer your question about the services, those are the main services. But then when COVID hit, we had to reroute the mission. I mean, we had another whole bunch of needs popped up. So our 5-year plan was to always have a veterans transitional home. What does that mean? Well, there are homeless organizations that house veterans. There's jail. There's rehabs. There's places that veterans are going to stay temporarily, but there's not a lot for that second phase. So if we're going to say, okay, hey, there's a mission here where they take in homeless vets. Well, they can take in homeless vets for a set amount of time. What about when those guys leave? Where do they go next? So we wanted that home 5 years ago. Pandemic stalled that a little bit.
Yeah.
So the need arose when, and I want to make sure I preface this very carefully. I know where you don't have time, Rick, but I need to make sure people know where I stand. I absolutely am not the guy. If you want to corner and make me answer a question about the VA, you will not hear a negative remark out of me. Okay. Now, the reason why is they are the largest healthcare system in our country. My wife works for a major hospital, and I've experienced the same treatment, lack of, mess ups in a civilian hospital as I have in the VA. Again, I'm not advocating for the VA. I'm saying my focus more is not pointing out what they're not doing right. My focus more is on how can I help them? How can I bridge the gap and work with them to meet the needs of the veterans that they are serving, that they might fall through the cracks. So back to this. The VA closes. There's no more support groups. There's no more going in the VA unless you have a medical appointment and you actually can show it on your phone that you have one that day. You must mask up. You must be vaccinated. There was all these like things where people you couldn't go in there and have a group with your fellow vets anymore like they used to have groups. So that shut down that physical interaction between guys. What else happened? Well, thank you for asking. There was no transportation. The VA transports from VA hospital to VA hospital. There were guys that were calling me saying, hey, they scheduled me for my surgery, but I have to go under anesthesia and I can't drive. So where we came in was, all right, listen, we see this need, and this will be the answer to your question. We see this need for a place for them to be able to hang out. You remember you couldn't even eat in a restaurant. So we rerouted the mission. We opened up one drop-in center program for a 1 day a week. We ran that for a year. We had served so many veterans that came in there to get a cup of coffee, hang out, watch TV, hang out with each other, encourage one another, that we saw the need to have more than 1 day a week. So we looked and we opened up our own Veterans Resource Center without any government help in the city of Allentown. So we went from one county, 1 day a week, to Monroe County, a different day a week. And within the first year, those two started. They were so successful, we said we need this full time. So we opened up our own center. And while we were, rerouting the mission to get those things, we saw the need for transportation. So we went out and we raised money and we got a van. So
you got the van, yeah.
We picked up the components. We picked up the two components that veterans were struggling with the most. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Filling the need. And just, as a side note for our listeners and viewers, Allentown is in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. We have listeners and viewers from all over the world on this show. And Mount Pocono is in the beautiful Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, adjacent to Allentown. So that's your geography lesson. My name is Magellan, and so thank you, Chris. Back to you.
So we're basically in 5 counties with 3 physical locations, but 4 of our services are nationwide. 4 of our support groups also have a virtual option. So we literally, this is, okay, I don't like to brag, but this is a little bit of this one really makes me so happy. I have a veteran that is zooming into my group on Monday nights from Georgia. And the reason I say this is because you would think, okay, well, the reason why is because where he lives, and this kind of ties into what you said about the Poconos, where he lives in Georgia, there is a lot of land between like the next towns. And there isn't a nonprofit organization that caters the veteran within 100 miles of this man's home. So to be able to provide a connection, a camaraderie, a get together with someone on Zoom and just make them know that whatever they're going through, they got someone that, cares about them and they can reach out and we can connect them to resources in their community. It's huge for them. And it's just really neat to see that. Who would have thought 6 years ago when we were selling T-shirts out of the trunk of our car that we would have programming that can reach people in other states? So
unbelievable. Look at the evolution. And, as we wrap up, and we're going to, in the, at the end, I'm going to ask you to give information on how veterans can connect and how people can support. But where do you see the evolution of Battle Borne moving forward? And I'm not going to give any kind of a time period, but what are the next exciting steps for Battle Borne?
Well, we're working on the home. I see it being like what I envisioned 6 years ago as a complete program. We could take guys in, that are struggling with whatever, use all of our partners from we can possibly house them. We transport them to and for appointments, get them set up with back to schooling, on-job trainings, make sure we're taking care of the small things. Like one of the things you and I didn't get to touch on is the newest project we took on in the last year was the biggest problem veterans are facing now, that transportation and connections back kind of okay, is food insecurity. We had to start a program called Military Share Food Distribution, We're handing out 65 packages, not meals, 65 family packages in the Lehigh County of Pennsylvania. And every month in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, we're up to 56 there. So we started with 25 and 25 a little over a year ago, and our numbers have increased. For those of you watching, the reason food insecurity has become such a difficult task that these guys are facing is because if they're on like a disability, right? They're on a set amount of military disability, or they're retired and they get so much money. If they don't own homes and the price of food and the price of rent has gone up and it supersedes their monthly payment, like they're getting a set amount of disability, and now that everything's gone up, they can't afford the groceries anymore. So we implicated that program as well. So where I see the organization as being a full, well-rounded program, which I like to title Mission Transition. We're going to help them transition from military life to a healthy, happy, productive civilian life where they can still feel connected to people and not feel like now that they're back in a different environment, they have to isolate. So yeah, that's it. And then the walk, we got the walk.
So Mission Transition, that's so exciting. I love it. And, as we close here, before we give all the information, please speak about the Walk for Recovery on June 8th.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. So, I know Rick and I had planned about having a lot more to talk about, but like I said, I appreciate you guys listening. This is not an easy thing to talk about. I mean, there's been a lot that has gone into this organization over the year. A lot of it has over the years we've been in existence. A lot of it has just been flying by the seat of our pants and things working out great, because if your heart's in the right place, you can't fail. It's what I truly believe. So 4 years ago, I lied. 5 years ago, like right before the pandemic was, we planned for a year about bringing a community walk together. I wanted to do something different, right? I wanted to there was all this constant, Chris, how do we understand the vets? And then the vets, like, we don't understand the civilians. And I'm just like, there's a divide that doesn't need to be there, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all people. And at one point, the vets were civilians. And, I would always just say, look, if you don't know how to identify with them, just listen to them. Just listen to them. Like sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is not your advice or what to do. It's an ear. So I thought about this crazy idea, and we started planning it, and then COVID hit and I couldn't do it for a year. But I thought, let's do a walk. Let's bring the community of civilians and veterans. All that goes out the door. We are doing a community walk together to raise awareness and stop the stigmas of mental health. Here's one we don't like to talk about: substance use disorder. I'll be honest. I sometimes don't like to bring it up, but we have vets facing those problems, right? So let's do a community walk where we bring everybody together. Let's raise some money, and let's help out some other small nonprofits that are boots on the ground, putting the money back into the community, because that's how we started. And we knew how hard it was to start out of our own pockets, buying one t-shirt, selling it out of the trunk of our car at every single place that would let us set up a table. Let's give back now that we're in a better position. And the first year walk was success. And on June 8th, Mr. Franzo, we will have the 4th annual Lehigh Valley Walk for Recovery at Lehigh Carbon Community College. There will be music. There will be hot air balloon rides. There will be food trucks. There will be a formal 5K. There will be yoga for people who don't want to run a 5K. I'm not running a 5K. I'm not even walking a 5K. Who walks 5? No. I mean, if I'm going anywhere, I know 5K is not 5 miles, but if I got to go 3.2 or whatever miles a 5K is, I'm getting in my car. Like I'm not doing that.
I'm getting in your car.
Right. I mean, I don't see any reason to run unless police are chasing you. I mean,
that's a whole nother episode, ladies and gentlemen, for part 2. That's probably going to be the most interesting part of the episode. It's almost like an episode of Cops. And so this was an absolute pleasure. Chris, if you could tell us, how can people reach Battle Borne?
So there's multiple ways of support. Obviously, if you are in anywhere in the northeastern PA region, we always love to have volunteers. We do gift cards for families in need when we can't supply the food. If it's like on a day when we're not handing out food, we're always taking like gift card donations to grocery stores or Visa gift cards. You can purchase our apparel online. We are battleborne with an E.com. You can buy our great gear. All of our proceeds from the gear help support the mission. Of course, monetary donations are always welcome. We have a PayPal account attached to the website. There's a lot of ways to give, and it's not just about money. We don't always like to make it like, oh yeah, send us your money. Money is very much appreciated, but so is time and just sharing our stuff, sharing our social media pages. That gets our word out there. We can help more veterans who know that we are here and that we exist. There are multiple ways to help an organization in your area without giving a monetary donation.
Fantastic. Everybody, this was absolutely a pleasure for me. Again, one of my personal heroes. He and his organization, they save lives, and they really do, and they help people to get from point A to point B and to be whole again, and especially after they've served our amazing country. Chris Yarnell, founder of Battle Borne. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you, and my pleasure for sure. This was Business and Brain Tumor Talk, and I'm your host, Rick Franzo. Everybody have a great day and stay gold.